Welcome back to the Warrior Servant Leader podcast. We are so glad you're joining us today. We have an incredible guest. He's a committed executive coach, business strategist, and a purpose-driven leader dedicated to transforming the lives of residential home builders and the skilled trade professionals that support that industry. He also is in June is being ordained as a deacon in the Catholic Church. And you take his combination of experience in Fortune 500 companies, his own upbringing, loss of their childhood home to a fire. His voice resonates across the construction industry, the faith-based leadership circles, and personal development spaces alike. His audience has included builders, contractors, architects, mortgage professionals, real estate teams, skilled trade educators, and anyone who believes homes are sacred and the people who build them deserve support. Welcome to what's going to be a fascinating conversation, Jay Meacham. Jay, we're glad to have you on the show today.
Oh my goodness gracious, Pat Welsh. I just want to acknowledge you for how you just created me. I'm like, wow, who's he talking about? Oh, that's me.
Yeah. Hey, when you're 100% Irish, we have an old saying, if I can't dazzle you with brilliance, I'll baffle you with BS. And I tell people I'm really good at brilliance.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you, my newfound friend. I just want to really recognize you for what you do and the space you've created here. It's absolutely amazing and it's wonderful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the accolades, which brings me kind of to my first question. So much in our busy lives, we get, I don't know, out of focus. And the question comes up, how can I manage a foolproof system to manage my emotions? Because so often, man, we got that fight, flight, or freeze response to challenges and obstacles or uncomfortable situations. How do we manage that?
There's no one size fits all. Here's what works for me and has worked for my clients that I've worked with. One, slow down. And people say, Jay, I can't slow down.
Yeah.
I have to go, 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 go. I got to chase after this project. I've got to meet this target. Da 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 da. I've got this hustle off the end of my desk that I've got to do. I got to make ends meet. I got a payroll to meet. And so it's time out. I'm not talking about you slowing down physically. Slow down your thinking. Just really slow down your thinking to the speed of love. What does that mean? Just slow down and take a time out. If you're inclined to prayer or meditation or journaling, dive into that. Or if you're not, try it just a little bit for 5 minutes, maybe. Do it for 5 minutes a day for a good 2 weeks. And if you miss a day, get back on and start again for 5 minutes. So if you or your listeners are familiar with James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, it's very, very useful for this kind of a situation where you identify, okay, I've got this knowing thing that's bugging me. How can I let go of it? Well, you start to get very accurate. You slow down and get very accurate about whatever it is that's niggling you and figure out how you can replace that feeling or that thought with something else that's more positive or more beneficial for you. And for me, that's very accessible for me through prayer and meditation and journaling. And if you're not inclined to doing that stuff, just go outside, get underneath the big blue, sphere and sit in nature. If you're in a big city, find a quiet space where you can sit, look at a tree, look at a bird, anything. Connect with what God has created. It's all around you. Just take time and sit down and look at it and appreciate it. And whatever's niggling you, just let it go. It sounds easier than it is to do. You know how you get good at something?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
what immediately comes to mind uh, from a faith-based perspective
Yeah.
is a lot of people, they throw around the word love, and you ask them, well, what, define love? And I ask people this, and I get a lot of actions that come from the perspective of love. And I years ago, I actually sat down. I'm not really big on acronyms, but there are some that I like, and one that I created myself is when I ask people what is love, or if somebody asks me what is love. Love is living out veritas every day, and veritas, the Latin word for truth.
Hmm.
And if you truly love someone, you're living out your truth, whatever that truth may be for you. For me, it's scripturally based. Um, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and all your strength. And uh, that helps me stay focused. And then to your point of that, you need to slow down and to the speed of love, and how you can do that. You journal, meditating. And I'm reminded of the scripture that says, knock and the door shall be open, seek and you shall find. That it's a biblical truth, and it's also a human condition truth, that whatever you're looking for, you will always find more of it.
Hmm.
And if you want to have more healthy, positive, emotional responses to circumstances as opposed to those knee jerk reactions, and that's what you're looking for, well, then you'll find more of that if you do what you're talking about, of actually looking for it and focusing on how can I, when that northbound horse, the south end of the northbound horse cuts me off on the highway, instead of waving, the one finger wave or laying on the horn, how can I more emotionally respond to that as opposed to reacting to it?
Hmm.
And that takes um, time and repetition, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Um, it all starts with you understanding what your intention is around something,
Hmm.
and setting that intention. If it's to admire the beauty and creation that exists in nature, then go do that, and you'll find it. If you set that intention, it will hit you right in front of the face. To your point, Pat, if you're looking for, the woe's me, the sky is falling, you're going to find that. You
Yeah.
absolutely will find
Yeah.
that.
You'll find the
Uh,
worst in people if that's what you're expecting and looking for.
exactly. Exactly. And that's something that's accessible to all of us as human beings. We have a choice. We have a choice
Yeah.
to create whatever we want to in our mind in a given second.
Yeah. And you probably have seen the research, that some of it says that we have as many as 80,000 thoughts a day, and
Yeah.
uh, 50,000 of them are negative. So the odds are pretty against your favor that the thoughts that you're thinking, it's because you're looking for the worsened circumstances, or like you
Hmm.
said, the woe is me. Uh, I tell people, to make this point that this is a reality. What you're looking for, you will find more of it. I'll tell people in counseling is, hey, or consulting is, hey, this week I want you to look for red Volkswagens, and come back next week and tell me how many red Volkswagens did you see this week. And
Yeah.
your immediate reaction is going to be, well, I'm not going to see any because I never do, because you're not looking for them. But because I've told you to look for it and focus on that, you're
Mhm.
now going to be more aware of your surrounding and circumstances because you're looking for red Volkswagens. And that theory, that philosophy, that action, if you do that in every aspect of your life, at work, I want people to be the best, employee. Well, look for their best behaviors and then reinforce those.
That, and I would add, take a look at the mirror at yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of an example are you setting as a leader for them to follow? Because people, oh my gosh, I mean, there's a lot of research and psychological study that's been plowed into how children at a young age, they're curious for one thing. And it's another thing, other adults need to be curious too. How quickly they latch onto things that they see adults doing, particularly their parents. That's why the family unit is so incredibly important. Kids will catch a whole lot more of what you see and what they see you doing versus what they hear.
Yeah.
And when you're leading a team, it's just as applicable then too. People are going to be watching what you do and say. So be very intentional about how you're showing up and what you're saying as a leader. And it's really more about how you show up and what actions you take.
Yeah.
I was gonna add one thing. We were talking about the people that think the sky is falling. It kind of in that same vein of journaling. Oftentimes when I work with folks who are kind of Debbie Downers, if you will, or they feel like I can't do that. They've got this huge, monstrous goal that's been handed down to them. And one of the things I have them do and reflect on and journal on is I call them STEM sentence exercises, where I'll say, okay, what if you were 5% more optimistic about reaching this? What would you do? How would you be? How would you act? And they'll come up, 5 minutes of that. They'll come up with this really long list about if I were 5% more optimistic about this situation, I would do this. And it's amazing. And I'm like, okay, that's if you're just 5% more optimistic. Multiply that by 5 times and you're 25% more optimistic.
Yeah.
Look at what could happen.
Wow. And how you take those little steps that create the big change.
Yes.
That's the key. We live in such a fast-paced, immediate response, gratification, or what expectations. Hey, there's an app for that, or let me Google it, or ask AI. And we don't spend any time actually reflecting and learning from our experiences. I call it a hit and run. We just do hit and runs through life. And and what you're saying about the how you show up and whatnot is when I train police officers in courtroom survival and how to testify, it is a scientific fact that, at least in the Western world, that people judge your trustworthiness and your veracity, your truthfulness, by 70 to 80% of your nonverbal communication, not what's coming out of your mouth, but the nonverbal. And we do it in our family. You know when your kids are lying to you, because you're reading their nonverbal communication. And what we fail to do, I think, and what I'd like to get some of your insights on how we can get beyond this, is how do we take that same critical analysis, if you will, or evaluation of ourselves, without being condemning or overreaching that self-assessment.
Yeah. So here's something I will do sometimes with folks. I use it myself. And it really applies to this, the first question you asked me. I will have folks, hold on a second. I'm going to draw on a piece of paper. I will have them draw on a piece of paper something like this.
Yeah.
A horizontal line across the page at the top and one going down. And on the left-hand side of that page, write WH at the top so that it looks something like that.
Yeah.
And I want them then, this recently happened, just to give you some context. I worked with a person about their annual performance appraisal and what they thought happened in that process. So I said, okay, slow down and let's stop and think about what happened. WH. And I want you to be like crime scene investigator.
Yeah.
What are the facts? Write down in bullet point fashion under the WH what happened. So I gave them a few minutes to write that all down. And then I said, okay, let's walk through what happened. And so they walked me through. While I walked in, my leader said that I was woefully optimistic about my performance over the last calendar year. And then he went into this explanation about funds were tight. The overall pool of dollars was at X percentage. And, your self-appraisal would say you're far above that pooled percentage. And so he said, here's what your percentage increase is going to be. And by the way, the fact that you raised $600,000 for our not-for-profit didn't factor into that at all. We just don't have the funds to go around. So those were the facts. Yeah. And I said, okay, now I want you to take some time and on the other half of the page, write down what you were thinking and what you were feeling, all of that. Just write it down. And so we had this big long list of things like, the nerve of him. I raised $600,000 for us. That didn't count towards my appraisal and my percentage increase. That's crazy. I can go somewhere else and make more money in the same kind of position. All of this just stuff. And so I said, get out the biggest drum of whiteout you can find and paint that half of the paper. Paint it. Just cover it up with whiteout. And I said, what's there after you finish your painting with whiteout? And he paused for a second and he said, nothing. Great. That's the way you're going to walk into the next conversation you have with your leader. You are not going to have any emotions or thoughts or feelings about him. You're walking in with a clean slate for him, and you're going to focus on the facts. That in and of itself, Pat, is the most powerful thing anybody can do for themselves. When they get balled up in the emotions of something and get angry or worried or stressed, it's like, okay, time out. What happened? Where you've just come from, what happened? Just the facts.
Yeah.
And then you can write down all the emotions and thoughts and feelings you had. So
yeah, and get them out. I mean, it's kind of like, flushing the radiator on your car. There's all this junk in there. Just flush it out and start and refill. And as you're telling that example, one of the first images that came to mind is, and we actually did an episode on this with he's a former police chief and elected constable down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And the title of the episode was "Let Judas Walk." Ooh. And as you're sharing that, whiting that out, and starting with the new slate, is think in terms of the human. Christ was human, and the human side of him. If you knew that somebody was about to betray you, and the consequences of that betrayal, and you could do something to stop it, but don't. Even though that, what's the definition of stress? When your mind overrides your body's desire to choke the living crap out of somebody that desperately deserves it, but your mind tells your body, don't do it. That's what I kind of think of is that, what happened, and you can have emotional reactions internally but you can also control externally what happens. And because have you seen the linear kind of explanation of that everything begins with a thought, and
Yes.
settled thoughts become attitudes, because that's what an attitude is, a settled way of thinking. And attitudes are displayed in behaviors. If your parent ever said to you, I don't like your attitude, what they're really saying is, I don't like your behavior, because that gives me insight into what's going on up here in your noggin. And then repeated behaviors become your habits. So if that's a clinical scientific truth, that thinking, attitude, behaviors, habits, and we almost always discuss those when it comes to bad attitudes and bad behaviors, then isn't the same thing true about good attitudes and good behaviors?
Yep.
So what are in your experience of counseling people and consulting with people, what are some of the biggest obstacles and challenges, individually or organizationally even, that are faced in reaching that kind of mindset and growing to a culture of more positivity than the negative?
I would say, first of all, and this is not always the case, typically men carry around a lot of that stuff bottled up inside of themselves. Not always, typically. And so they carry around all that weight on their shoulders and in their heart, in their chest. And sometimes women are that way too. Men, the way we're wired and the way we're made, we're just different than women. Not that it's better or worse, we're just different. And women typically will externalize that stuff. They will talk therapy. Not all of them are that way. Most of them. And I'm not saying men need to do that. They need to understand that fundamentally, the human heart and the human mind were not created to carry all that stuff. Simply were not created to do that. And so when I meet leaders, typically males, they're aching. They're just begging to have someone listen to them. And that's it. That really is it. And so, yeah, there's bigger things that are going on and things they got to do, and there's work they got to get done, some heavy lifting that they need to do. There's a whole lot of weight on them and inside of them that's weighing them down, so they can't do what they're supposed to be doing effectively or efficiently, or it's not sustainable. I'll put it that way. So back to your question. First of all and foremost, it's people need to let go. I'll put it that way. Just let go of some of that stuff. When I work with small business owners, it shows up in spades. They created this baby, they've grown it to some level, and the next step is, what do I do? You know what? You're going to have to let go of somewhat of what you've been doing all this time, because you can't, it's not sustainable. You can't do everything. You've got to let go of some stuff in order to grow, you and your business, both. It's the same way in executive leadership. As you move up the corporate ladder, you can't continue to do everything you used to do or show up the way you used to show up. It got you to where you're at. Yes. You can't lean into that anymore. You're going to have to figure out how to rejigger some things. And often it's in here.
Yeah. And that's that fear of failure that, we were brought up, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And I had a lieutenant tell me one time, he goes, there's a fine line between leading by example and doing somebody else's job for them. And that was a big wake up call for me. And one of the best analogies somebody ever gave me about this whole process of letting go, whether it's in a business arena or any arena, is this is the analogy they gave me. you're a parent, you have a newborn baby, and that baby is 100% dependent on you for everything. And you want that baby to grow up and be independent and all the dreams and visions and all that stuff you have for them. And as they grow, they get to be a year and a half old or whatever, and you're trying to teach them how to walk, and you'll hold their hands and everything. But at some point, you have to let go of them, and they learn how to stand up first. So they'll grab the coffee table or whatever. They're pulling themselves up, but at some point, in order to walk, they got to let go of their fears and their insecurities, their doubts, and they got to fall on their butts a few times, or a lot of times. Hopefully their diaper isn't full when they do, but hey, but that analogy painted for me the picture of, in the business, for the entrepreneurs out there, that you birth this great idea, and it's like having a kid. At some point in time, you got to trust that your kid is going to learn to walk and fail a few times, and then eventually to run and all those things, and they can feed themselves. All those things of progression take time and patience on your part, but the hardest part is that letting go.
And we've got to the precipice of trust, then, is the big thing. You have to find others that you can bring alongside you, that you can partner with, and you can trust them with doing what you've been doing, that you're now going to trust them with. That's a key thing, particularly for small business owners as they're scaling, is finding people they can trust.
Yeah. And who that not only trust from an integrity standpoint, but trust in that they want and get the vision and values of your business, and your personal vision and values, and identifying that, so that you're minimizing the chances of having a Judas in your crowd, kind of deal. What kind of getting into that visions and values, and do you see that there are non-negotiable values in the business world, as opposed to people go, hey, it's your company, do what you want?
I would argue that if you don't have some non-negotiables as a leader or as a business owner, then you aren't a leader.
What are some of the hard rock non-negotiable values that you see?
Just by way of illustration, for me, and when I'm working with someone, one of my non-negotiables is you show up on time with your sleeves rolled up, ready to work. Number one thing. 2, you're coachable. What does that mean? I will have a sense of interacting with them before we ever enter an agreement or I make a proposal to them, whether they're coachable or not. They're hungry. They have this thirst to learn, or they aren't satisfied with their status quo, where they're at, and they're ready to upscale. They're committed to that. So that's the second thing I look at. The third thing is how you do anything is how you do everything. And what does that mean? It's how you show up, how you communicate, how you do anything is how you do everything. So if you're showing up late and you aren't ready to get to work, or you haven't done something that we agreed to do, and that's another thing, I work on agreements versus expectations. I'm very clear about making agreements with folks that I'm working with. And I'll ask, okay, we've agreed to do X, Y, Z. How does that sound? Versus I don't come in and say, I expect you to do this, or I don't say then. Sometimes I'll get people asking me, oh, well, you have all the answers. You're the coach. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have all the answers. That's why you've come to me. And 9 times out of 10, Pat, they have the answers. They just don't know it.
Yeah.
So those are some non-negotiables for Coach Jay. How do those show up in the corporate world? They'll show up as visions or values, mission statements, that kind of thing. You have to do some teasing sometimes to get out of those things. Really, what's the non-negotiable?
Yeah.
I typically, when I'm working with leaders, I'll have them distill their own non-negotiables. This is a great vision and mission statement for your corporate entity. Wonderful. Love it. How do you embody those things? How are you living out this vision of being, the best version of XYZ? Or I often have them come, they've got to be able to articulate. They've got to bring something to the game and put legs under whatever's in that mission or vision statement.
Yeah. No. And one of the things you mentioned, the coach has all the answers. That really jumped out at me. And one of the first things I thought of, because there's a difference between coaching and mentoring people. And if you're generally coaching someone, you're helping them identify their own strength, helping them identify their own strengths and weaknesses and work on improving in those weaknesses and execution. And the analogy it was shared with me was, it looks like this: the offensive coordinator, the offensive coach of a NFL football team has guys up in the way up here in the top of the stadium, so they're looking down and seeing the big picture, and they're based on all the information they have at that moment. They make a call for the next play. And the defense does the same thing. But for an offense, they make and they send it down to that offensive coordinator on the field, who talks it into the helmet of the quarterback. And this is the play they call. And the quarterback gets up there, and he's boots on the ground and in the middle of it all, not, way up here on the 6th floor of the stadium, looking down, and he doesn't see the same thing you saw up there, and he makes an audible. He changes the call, and the coach trusts him to make that right call, that audible. You hear him kill, the quarterback, or whatever their signal is to, and they already have an alternate play in mind, or he barks out something that the players should know, okay, this is what we're going to do instead. And that, if you're looking at getting a coach, one of the, I think for me, one of the non-negotiables is you have to be adaptable. You, the person that's asking me to help you have to be adaptable. And I'll ask you 2 questions. Can you change, and will you change? And if you go, yeah, I can change, but no, I won't, well, then I'm not going to be your coach. And I think that's what makes, in the sports arena, coaches and players successful, is they're both adaptable and based on what they're seeing and whatnot. And they're not simply, because if you played for Vince Lombardi, one of his famous quotes is, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. And if that's your standard, if you lose a game, then you're worthless, or you're not going to be a part of our team. Vince Lombardi was not adaptable, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things we need, that is hard for men to do, is have that adaptability when somebody else sees something differently than we do, and we feel like we're being attacked or criticized, or hey, I'm the COO, you're not, don't tell me what to do, kind of thing. And so how How do business owners or people in leadership, in the leadership structure, how can they identify what is that? I think you call it the sweet spot. What is that sweet spot that makes the engine run smoother? You're going to still have obstacles and challenges, but how do you identify what is that sweet spot?
For the leader or their business?
Well, both. I mean,
Both.
kind of, yeah.
There's a lot of things. A simple way to go about finding that sweet spot is first, as the leader, if you plot the culture of your organization on a horizontal axis,
Mm-hmm.
and on a vertical axis, plot the performance, the actual metrics, the sweet spot, is going to be in that upper right corner where you have absolutely maximized performance and really leveraged culture. I call it a quadrant, a 4-up of performance and culture. So if you think about it, put yourself in one of the 4 quadrants. Are you high culturally aligned, high performing as the leader? Great. If not, where are you at? If you're not up there in the upper right quadrant, are you in the lower right quadrant? So really high on culture, but your performance isn't where it needs to be. There may be an opportunity for you to invest in yourself to figure out what's going on with your performance. Are you in the upper left-hand quadrant where, yeah, it's real high performance, but the culture is not what I thought it was supposed to be or is what I think it should be? I'm not aligned with the culture. Then you might want to think about what are some other things you could do in the organization. Maybe you're not cut out to be the leader. Culturally, you're not aligned with it, but it's performing. If you're in the lower left-hand quadrant where it's low performance, low culture, you're not in the right place.
Yeah.
What you've built and created is not aligned with your performance nor with your culture. The culture of the organization is not aligned with you. And so I would start with that. Put yourself somewhere in those 4 quadrants for what you've built. Then go around and do it with each one of your team members from your perspective. Where are they at culturally and relative to performance? Those folks that are up in the upper right-hand quadrant, those are your A performers. Those are the ones you want to keep. You want to duplicate them, triplicate them. They are your workhorses. You want to acknowledge them. You want to continue to nurture them. You want to continue to pour into them. The folks that are in the lower left-hand quadrant, I affectionately and humorously say, you need to think about returning them to society because they are weighing you down as a business and organizationally. They're weighing you down. It might be a relief to them. They're probably frustrated. The other 2, you can work in the upper left, lower right. You can work around finding new things to enrich them or taking a look at their systems or processes and giving them a boost, shore them up somehow, some way, invest in them so that you can make them top right quadrant.
Yeah.
That's a quick way to go about it.
And a lot of people will go, well, yeah, that we do that. We don't have the quadrant, but we do that with performance appraisals.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience is performance appraisals are an exercise in futility because they're not designed to actually do what you just said, identifying performance and culture and the ability to what I want to say, come up to and beyond the minimum standards.
Mm-hmm.
What is your experience or insights in how effective are the typical performance appraisals that you see being used in the business world?
I'm going to be very blunt and honest with you.
There we go. That's what I want.
In 30 plus years of working in the corporate world, my experience, both as a performer and as a leader, is that the performance appraisals have evolved over time to fit a need to organize people into slots. Think the Hayes system, if you will. A very institutional way of categorizing people. Yes, there's a human element, but it's there to help support, really, whatever merit increase or whatever way we're going to recognize an individual performance. That's the whole reason it's there. It's kind of gotten gussied up as, oh, this is a way to recognize and appreciate them. Okay. Why wait for an annual performance appraisal to do that?
Right.
There's absolutely nothing that prevents you from doing that on the spot. Why does it have to wait until the fourth quarter or whenever an organization does their annual performance appraisals? It's simply a way of gathering objective data to support merit increases. That's all it is.
Yeah, and my experience is the objective, quote unquote, data is personality driven, or it's laziness on the part of the person doing the performance appraisals. You know what? I'm just going to say everybody's doing a great job, or yeah, they're operating above expectations or minimum standards, whatever those fit. You know, if it's on a scale of 1 to 10, self-initiated activity, yeah, they're at a 6. And then and then there will always be that one person that is exceptional, and you really like them because they don't cause you any problems, and you don't have to hold their hand, and you give them an 8. And there's no real thought put into A, doing the appraisal, and B, actually after you have done the appraisal, the folks that are operating, I call it, they're on the lazy river ride. They're retired on duty, but they're not underperforming to the point you can take disciplinary action. And you just kind of like ignore it and hope they don't cause me any more problems. I think that's a difficult way. I think you talk about building a life that you don't need to escape from, and how many businesses do we have out there that people that work there, they have, in police work, we call it the KMA letter, the kiss my, you know what, I know exactly on what day at what time I can retire, and I can't wait to get to that point. And that is how I'm going to live the next 10 years, because that's when my KMA date is.
Mm-hmm.
How do we actually build a culture and an environment that people don't want to escape from? Or in your own personal life, how do you build a personal life that isn't one that you're trying to run away from, but you're actually building a life you love?
Yeah. It all gets back to that I word, intention. What is it really I intend to do?
Yeah.
If you want to get very spiritual about it, what's God's calling on me? What has God placed before me? And if you're not a believer, then why are you here? Ask yourself, what's your purpose? Why are you placed on the face of the earth? And that may sound harsh. It's just, you got to take a real good measurement of yourself and what you're up to. And I always like to think of things in terms of, if I could do anything, what would it be and what would it take?
Mm-hmm.
A good example. I'm working with someone right now that, when I first met them, they were in a funk, to use their words, a funk. And they'd been seeing a therapist for several years, and they kind of had reached the end of their work together. And then I crossed paths with them. And he couldn't articulate any more than, I'm in a funk. More comes out later. Well, I haven't started any new projects in 18 months. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
In 18 months. Okay. You're the leader. You're the founder of this organization. You haven't started anything in 18 months. What is going on? So it's like a trail of breadcrumbs. Eventually, he discovers that his own internal thoughts were impacting his ability to function as a leader. He basically had shut down. He was farming out, contracting out all of his decision-making capacity and his agility to other people on his team. And it's kind of like, hold on, is that really what you want? So we had to dial back, way back to why did you start this business?
Mm-hmm.
What was your intent? It's a long story to say, okay, it really starts around what is your intent?
Yeah. No.
Who are you being? That's the first question I ask folks lots of times. Who are you being? Don't tell me your name. I'm Jay Meacham. If you ask me who I am, I'm going to tell you I am a man after God's heart. My pillars are faith, family, and friends, and in that order. I was knit in my mother's womb before I ever was born. That's who I am.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be that kind of a deep spiritual thing, but take time to think about what's your intent? Who are you? Who are you being?
Yeah. And we learn, we're conditioned because from the time you're old enough to talk, how many times does your parent or friends of your parents go, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?"
Yeah.
And we think in terms of professions and careers. Oh, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a firefighter, police. I want to be something as opposed to who are you? And I know you're talking about Jeremiah. I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. I consecrated you before you were born. That means a purpose, that we have a purpose.
Exactly.
And part of our journey is to discover what that is. And normally we do it in terms of looking at the gifts and talents that we have. And I tell people, I didn't know that concept until I was 28 years old and had been practicing law for 4 years and hated every minute of it, basically. And my wife said to me, "You're always pissed off. What do you really want to be doing?" And it's like, I wanted to be a police officer. That was my vocation. I think that's my calling. And she goes, "Then go do it." And so I had that support system. And I think one of the things that you do and that we need to encourage other people to do is don't go it alone. Ask for, you could call it a battle buddy, an accountability partner, a coach, a mentor, whatever you want to call it. Have that kind of person in your life that you can have these kind of conversations like we're having, and that we'll say, we'll call BS when you're BSing.
Yeah.
So, man,
can we go back to your KMAs?
Yeah.
I want your listeners to know that there are KMAs walking all over the face of the earth. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
And, if you're a coach or an accountability person or a partner, it's a gold mine. The thing is, you can't want something for someone more than they want it. So those KMA folks, I'd be challenging them about, okay, great. You've got it ringed on your calendar. Until that day, who are you?
Yeah.
I would get in their face and I would call bullshit on them.
Yeah.
I don't give a damn about your KMA.
Yeah.
Who are you today?
Or, and you get it so often. What do you value? Oh, faith, family, friends, and in that order. You hear that. And I would look at young officers. I'd ask them that question, and they often would say that some would lead faith out, but family, friends are there. And
that's
then
okay.
and no, it is. But then I go, well, I'm going to call it BS. If your family is so important to you, why are you signing up for every available overtime? Well, because I'm trying to pad my pension for when I retire. And I go, okay, when can you retire? Well, another 23 years. Okay, so for the next 23 years, overtime in your pension check is really what you value, not your faith, family, and friends. So
They
how
have
can
a
we get
yeah,
those realigned?
yeah, they have alignment issues. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they have to go through this head, heart, gut check with folks, especially when they're contemplating something really substantial. And I'm like, okay, where's your head at on this? You've done the math. Where are you at? Well, it makes sense. Okay, great. Where's your heart at? Well, I don't know. How about your gut? I get this feeling you're not in alignment, so you better not do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll call alignment BS on leaders, particularly where they're like, "This is great. They've rationalized it. They've done the math. Yeah, but I sense something else is not quite there."
Yeah. And I was having so I'm like the dog that sees a squirrel. I see it, and and when I'm doing podcasts, it's like the guest just said such and such, and I'm like, oh, squirrel. That reminds me. And that whole alignment thing is when I was practicing law before I became a police officer. I was taking 3,000 milligrams of Tylenol a day because I was having headaches back.
Wow.
And I went to I worked for the county, so we had to go to the county clinic, type
Mhm.
deal. And I get this doctor, and he's like, bend over, touch your toes. He's doing some silly shit. And then he goes, you sit at at a desk and work a lot and work on a computer and stuff like that. I go, yes, sir. And he goes, well, just work on your posture and sit up straighter or whatever. And I'm like, okay, what about the Tylenol? He goes, is it working? I go, yes. He goes, then just keep taking it. And I
Oh.
as I am now in my late 60s, I'm like taking that much acetaminophen, and you have a couple of beers your liver's going to turn to nothing. But the long and short of it was, I was sharing at church with a friend. Dr. Yuschek was a chiropractor, and I was telling him about it, and he goes, "Come
Use
down."
check. Use check. I love that name.
Yuschek, yeah, and unrelated to the Yuschek that plays in the NFL,
Ah.
but he goes, "Come down and see me." And so I go down, and I'm sitting on the exam tables, and he goes, he's just talking with me and stuff, and then he goes, we're gonna do some X-rays. So I come back from the X-rays, and he says, "Wouldn't you have a head injury?" And I said,
Mhm.
"Second grade. I fell off of monkey bars and had a skull fracture 2 places, and that got lacerates. Well, what we anointing of the sick. I was in a coma, blah blah blah, all that stuff." And he goes, and so then I'm sitting there, and he goes, "I bet it hurts right here." And he pushes a point on the middle of my spine, and it just like shot me through the roof. I was not having any back pain. I was having headaches.
Mhm.
And it came down to, your skull is not sitting on the axis of your spine
Mhm.
correctly because of the head injury, and your spine is trying to change to relieve that pressure. He goes, "You need to get your spine aligned." And that's what it was. The signs and symptoms were up here in my head, but the alignment was somewhere else in my body. And when you're doing the mind, heart, and gut, I'm thinking head, spine, hips,
Use it.
which was my experience. And then after having, so many sessions of manipulation and whatnot, no more headaches. And then he also shared with me, here's how you avoid to get out of that misalignment in the future, and gave me some exercises and some tips.
Yeah.
It's no different in the business world and the performance world of employees and building relationships and building businesses, is having that alignment and having a solution to get realigned when you're
Mhm.
out of alignment. But so, wow, what what a great conversation. Jay, how can people reach out to you if they want to learn more about this, or engage you for some one-on-one consulting?
Yeah, sure. CoachJMeacham.com. So see, it's all run together. CoachJaymeacham.com. And they can find, for my friends that are builder friends, my BFs, and even FOBs, friends of builders, there's a wonderful little pop-up on the main page. It's a little kind of diagnostic that they can download and kind of walk themselves through and see where they're at, get accurate. There's also a form on there where folks can reach out to me. They have an inquiry, can connect there. I also have a newsletter that I publish monthly that they can sign up for as well. So CoachJMeacham.com.
Awesome. And I know your niche is in that, and we didn't even get into the details of how you found that niche, that calling and whatnot, when your childhood home burned to the ground and all those things. I wanted to so much just deep dive into the principles that you're using with your clients who are more in that construction and support industries around construction. Into it's so the truths of those principles are so applicable in your personal and private life, not just the business arena. So I really want to, I'm going to get you back on and get into that story of how that fire, you said literally, when we talked previously, literally there was nothing left of your house.
All we had were the clothes on our back.
Yeah, literally. And I want to get into that and the emotional and spiritual influences that you learned and grew up with, because there's so much more. And I want to congratulate you on, because I know the extent that it takes to be ordained in the diaconate of the Catholic Church. That's an exceptional achievement and calling and vocation that God is going to use you in your parish and in your community, and what a blessing you're going to be, and already are, I'm sure. But was it in June is your formal ordination?
June 20th. And I want to ask a huge favor of you and all your listeners. Pray for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The devil is rearing his ugly head, so to speak. And the temptations, I've been told, the closer you get to ordination, it's going to be hot and heavy, and it is happening. So please pray for me and the 9 other guys that are in my cohort group. It's a 5-year process. Pray for us, please.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jay, thank you so much. What a great conversation. We're going to get you back on and dive even deeper into a lot of this. For our audience, thank you. It's because of you and your commitment to grow in your warrior servant leader mindset that we're in 32 countries on 6 continents now. And that is only because of you. So thank you so much. And as I close every episode, always strive to do the right thing at the right time, the right way, and for the right reasons, because that's what a warrior servant leader does every time, every day. Love y'all. See you next week.